best friend because they were talking about Leibniz and their child. I would do Sunny Boy next. And then Scott. And then yeah, Damon's good to be last because did you read his? I'm okay. I think it's a good last comforting.
Right there. You got another one?
Does anybody?
She didn't answer her phone, so we'll just have to do what we can do.
Definitely want to. Everything else kind of flows into it.
So that's going to be right now.
Rabbi will bring it up as we go.
Right, yes.
Yeah, so I actually, Steve and Alicia's the same way, so I had someone pick me up and bring me here.
I just
And
don't understand it. Like, I don't know.
yeah,
I just don't get it. Yeah, I'd say we just start.
And then we'll have leaders come, and then I'll read all these others, and hopefully by that time
Yeah.
she's here. But if she's not,
and you put it
It's
at
fine.
the end, or that is the end.
that is the end of
Oh,
that part.
well, maybe you would just
I'll do whatever.
keep
Julie, I'll do whatever you wish.
I wish she was here.
I should have had her send them to me, so I had them, and I would have read them.
Yeah. Yeah, and she uses GPS. You okay, Tim?
Said she can see a Bible.
Oh, really?
She said she can see it.
Oh.
Because I said, I think there's a bunch of sisters here.
Don't do anything embarrassing because people can see
You
you.
can see it now. My aunt said she can see a Bible. I don't know where. Is that the camera? Oh.
I need my
Dayan HaEmes. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who is the true judge. Mizmor LeDavid. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. God makes me lie down in lush pastures. God leads me beside tranquil waters. God restores my soul and guides me in righteous paths for his name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your scepter and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the full view of my adversaries. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Frank Bodziak is survived by his wife, Julie, his daughter, Alicia, Stephen, stepdaughter, Jessica, her husband, Jeff, stepson, Scott, and Danielle, his grandchildren, Lexi, Christopher, Colin, Henry, Stephen, and Kyle, his sister, Carol, and his brother, Ted, Diane, along with 4 nephews and 5 nieces, and a great many grandnephews and grandnieces,
I was just
and
gonna say
Carol's
that.
husband, John. Frank was predeceased by his first wife, Linda. At this time, I'm going to invite Diane to come and say a few words.
Hi, I'm Diane. I'm married to Frank's brother. I have known Frank for over 60 years. Frank was a character, but he was lovable, and he would do anything for anybody. I mean, he has helped a lot of people over his lifetime. So you kind of put aside the way Frank was sometimes, you know. He was stubborn and, you know, he made you laugh and he also made you mad. But in the end, he was a friend for a very long time, not just a brother-in-law. And I could go on, but I don't want to stand up here and go on and on. But he was loved, and he was with us throughout our whole life. We never lived far apart. He lived in New Jersey. He lived in Forked River. We built a house in Manchester, which was the right next town right over. We moved to Florida. He decided he was going to come to Florida. He stayed with us while his house was being built. And we have always, my husband has always been with him. Sometimes they didn't get along, you know, but they never let it stop their feeling for, you know, for each other as brothers. Let's see, I think, you know, there's a lot. But my husband also wanted me to speak for him because he feels he cannot stand up here and speak. They sort of were when they were young, like 2 peas in a pod. And whatever one did, the other one did. They got in trouble together, and they sort of had like the same friends. And then they had their own friends. So I can't look at him because he's making me cry. Thank you. All I can say is Frank will always be in our hearts. And with the most wonderful memories. We were all a close family, you know, and it's hard. But like I said, he'll always be in our hearts. Thank you.
Good job, Mom. I'm always good until I see someone cry. And when I see someone else cry, like most of us, that's when we start crying. So I'm trying to compose myself.
Say who you are.
My name's Nicole. That's my mom. And Frank was my uncle. He was my dad's brother, and he was also my godfather. He fit the part, as you can tell by the pictures, you know, that are posted of him like this, you know. That's kind of what he looks like, and he was my godfather. And I have so many memories of my uncle, I don't even know where to start, but I think I can share this with my brothers and sisters and all my cousins, is that the first thing that comes to mind is all the summers we spent as kids at his house on Bamber Lake, and that was in New Jersey, in Forked River. A bunch of us used to sleep in the attic because that was just the only place that we could all fit the kids. And it had stairs that led up to it, and it was more like a loft, so he didn't just throw us all in the attic. It was like, you know, there were like mattresses and beds and stuff, and I think it was Alicia's room at one point, right, if I can remember correctly. But it was fun, and I remember that. And you know, we were very young, so that's a memory that I have of us all getting together and like all the kids sleeping in the attic. I remember spending a lot of time like doing gymnastics on the beach at Bamber Lake with my cousins and with Alicia and my sister. I remember walking on the balance beam that my uncle had built for Alicia because she was, you know, into gymnastics a lot, and that's just a memory, you know, that sticks out. I remember the family would all get together for holidays at my grandmother's house, and there were just a lot of kids. We were all there, a lot of kids, and that's when my cousins out in California, they were still here, and we would all get together at my grandma's house, which was his mom and my dad's mom. As we grew older, you know, those childhood memories, they were put in the past, and you know, when I finally got married in 1996, my Uncle Frank was my chauffeur. I didn't ask him to do that. He just offered to do it, and he had a rental car, and he was our chauffeur when we left the wedding, and that was just a nice memory, like a nice thing, you know, for him to do for us. I didn't see him that much, you know, after that, because we all grew older, you know, we all had our own lives. He ended up moving down here to Florida with my parents, you know, and every time we came to visit, you know, I got to spend time with him and Julie. You know, we would come every other Christmas, like we would alternate, you know, stay up in Georgia. I'm from Georgia. We'd stay there one year and then come down to my parents for the next. And my kids refer to him as the pool uncle because every Christmas, even though we didn't celebrate Christmas, he would give my kids Hershey's bars, and in the wrapper he'd put $20. So the kids would look forward to that Hershey bar with the $20, you know, stuck in there. And he didn't have to do that, you know, but he did, and the kids remember that. That's what they remember. They're like, you know, oh, we're going to get a candy bar with money in it, you know, from Uncle Frank. So. You know, there's no better way to a kid's heart than chocolate and cash. So, you know, and he still did that, you know, up until, you know, the most recent Christmas that we were here. You know, he still did that for my kids. And that was just, you know, something special that he didn't have to do, that he did, you know, anyway. You know, so I never thought I'd be here, like, giving this speech right now. It's really surreal. Like, you know, you're more prepared for something when, you know, someone has an illness that's like prolonged, and you get more prepared for it. But when something happens so suddenly, it's almost like it's not real. You know, it's almost like it's not real. But, you know, unfortunately it is real, you know, and it might be hard for us without him, but think of how easy it is for him right now. You know, it's so easy, you know, it's so easy for him right now. You know, we're the ones struggling, but he's not, you know. He's having the best time, I'm sure. I'm sure he's here with us, you know. He's here with us right now being like, all right, you know, good turnout. Thanks, guys, you know. Hey, thanks for coming, you know, and honoring me, you know. That's just how God meant for it to be, you know, and we will all get to share in the same eternal happiness with him someday. And just until that day comes, let us all continue to pray for peace and comfort for Julie and for Alicia and her family, and my dad Ted, and my Aunt Carol, who's in California, who couldn't be here. She's, getting up there in age, but I'm sure she's watching. Hey, Aunt Carol. As they all learn, to live on, without him until they and all of us meet him again in heaven one day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Because of the interesting times we live in, a lot of people who would have been here obviously are not here. So they sent what they would have said, which I'll read for them. The first is from Carol, from Frank's sister.
California.
From California. You want me to say where they're from?
Well, you could have.
Yeah, from California.
I know you work alone.
Yeah, yes, I do. She said, to write about Frank's childhood shenanigans, one must include his brother Ted. They played together, fought together, and got into trouble together. One incident happened when they were around 8 and 10 years old. At that time, our house was the last house on the street near a large wooded area. Walking through these woods, one came upon clay mining pits. One of the clay pits filled with spring water that formed a beautiful freshwater pond. Kids from the neighborhood came to this area to swim, sunbathe, or other nefarious activities. One late afternoon, Dad went looking for the boys and could not find them in the neighborhood. He thought they might have gone to the pond, which they were not to go to without supervision. When Dad came to the pond, he found the boys' clothing at the edge of the water, but no boys. Could you imagine what was going through Dad's mind at the time? There had been a drowning at one time, and I'm sure this was on Dad's mind. Then suddenly there came a jungle yelling from Frankie out of the trees. There they were in the trees, naked or half naked, playing Tarzan, or maybe pirates, who knows? As scared as Dad was, I'm sure he wanted to throttle them right then. I do not remember the aftermath, but knowing Dad, who was not the most sympathetic father, they both got their comeuppance. The next one is from Frank's lifelong friend Richie from New Jersey. When a friend leaves us, what has been left behind are memories. Memories of growing up in President Park. Memories of swimming and ice skating at the little lake at the clay pits. Memories of me telling Frank about someone smashing a beer can on his forehead when beer cans were steel, and trying it before I could tell him to use the side of the can and not the top of the bottle. As I looked at him with a red circle on his forehead and tears rolling down his cheeks. Memories of Frank coming to my house in President Park to show me his brand new motorcycle that he just picked up from the dealer, and me asking him if I could take it for a ride, and watching the blood drain from his face as I climbed on and asked how to shift because I had never been on a motorcycle before. Memories of Frank and I working at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware and living 5 days a week in a rented, furnished, dump mobile home with no telephone before cell phones, or television, playing Trivial Pursuit for entertainment. The loser of each round had to drink a shot of tequila. Needless to say, after a few rounds, we didn't care about the answers. Memories of Beth telling Frank that she would like to introduce him to someone and that he better not screw around because the person was her boss. You see, I was Frank's best man at his first wedding to Linda, and Bev was the maid of honor, so he knew what Frank was capable of. Anyway, Frank was Frank, and Julie married him anyway. And it was the lasting joke throughout their marriage that if Frank complained, Julie would just say, well, blame Bev. But the best memory of all was knowing Frank was my friend for over 60 years. The next one is from his son-in-law, Steven, Sonny Boy, from Virginia. I'm only reading what's written.
I was thinking about that.
To casually speak about Frank without poking fun at him or being on the receiving end of his quick digs is not to have known him at all. As most anyone who has ever spent time with Frank can think of a wonderful story of remembering when Frank said or did something that was funny or crazy, or would leave everyone just shaking their heads saying, "Yep, that's Frankie," and knowing something more outrageous was just around the corner. This was indeed the man we all felt comfortable being ourselves around, and knowing you will not be judged for being yourself. However, you knew all too well you will most definitely be made fun of, especially during large family gatherings, and for many years as well. And that was the brilliance behind the man, to laugh repeatedly at ourselves and each other without malice. To truly know what this man held dearest in his heart was very easy to see. Just look around you right now. We are all of us a fine representation of Frank's precious few. He saw something unique in each of us, whether in our flaws or attributes, nevertheless a quality he would need to rely on time and again to ensure the circle was strong and could stand the test of time, with or without him here. So using Frank's old school and often unique philosophy of there are no free lunches, I heard him say, "If you want to sit at my right hand, you must earn it." Knowing that when you did sit there, you really knew that you did earn it. And if you brought something good, you would most likely leave with something great, regardless what it was. Friendship, faith, advice, love, it really didn't matter. In closing, I can certainly fill page after page with words to describe my father-in-law and my dear friend, like faith, love, honor, integrity, principles, values, forgiveness, and many more as well. But I truly think it was his flaws that drew us the closest. He was indeed just a man who was always trying to be better for all of us. And he knew that, but by and far the best one I've ever known. The world is a much better place because of how he inspired us to just be us, flaws and all. I stated at his wedding to Julie, I love no man more than you, Frank. Nothing has changed. I got this, Frankie. All good. The next one is from Frank's stepson, Scott, from New Jersey. Frank was a man's man. I always admired Frank's unwavering self-confidence and fortitude. He seemed so comfortable in any situation and never got intimidated. He was an unshakable rock. Although he looked like a big, tough guy, Frank was very approachable and had a playful demeanor. He genuinely just wanted to make people laugh, and he had an arsenal of jokes to bring anyone to tears. He had a remarkable gift for making a new friend every time he walked into a room. He instilled a sense of community and showcased what it meant to love thy neighbor. He kept conversations fresh and with a fun fact or good story to go with every moment. Frank was a gentleman with a good old-fashioned American values. He was always the first one to open a door or pull out a chair for you. He was incredibly hospitable and generous, but never boasted. Whenever I would visit, he not only opened up his home to me, but before I left, he was always sure that I had a full tank of gas and a hot meal in my stomach, and what an exquisite cook he was. Frank was at his core a man of conviction and principle. He knew exactly who he was and how he wanted to live his life. His curiosity and countless hours scouring the internet for the latest news or conspiracy theory meant he was always one step ahead of the rest of us. Whether religious or political, he had a sound argument for every belief he held. As many of you know, he lived for a good debate. If you ever spent more than 5 minutes talking to him, chances are he made you question a few of your own beliefs. No matter how rowdy the crowd was getting, he would stick to his guns and continue to speak his mind. Frank had all the hallmarks of a man who was kind, true to himself, and lived a fulfilled life. I had incredible respect for this man. The lessons he bestowed upon me I will carry with me into the future. In Frank's honor, I hope we can all try to speak a little more honestly, tell jokes liberally, and make friends with a stranger spontaneously. And in that way, we can lighten up the world as Frank did. And finally, this one comes from Frank's brother-in-law, Stephen, from Texas. What can I say about Frank that most of you don't already know? Oh, sorry, there's one more after that. He touched many lives with his love and compassion for life, family, and spiritual beliefs. Through the years, I got to know him with our meaningful and sometimes heated discussions over a cigar and a drink. I learned much about him, how he cherished his first wife, Linda, losing her to cancer, how he adored his daughter and her family, and how proud he was to be a truck driver, and how much he cared for and loved my sister, Julie. He had a great sense of humor and would embarrass you in a minute with a witty comeback. Frank was not complicated, or he did not hold back his opinions, or was he politically correct. These were some of the many reasons I had the greatest respect for him. We once spoke about my parents and who would take care of them when the time came. Right away and without hesitation, Frank said in this matter-of-fact voice, that they would live with him. I thought to myself, isn't Frank closer in age to my parents than any of us? He explained that Julie is the daughter, and for him it was normal that the wife's parents would end up with the daughter. I was truly impressed that he was willing to take on such a huge undertaking, especially when there were 3 other siblings who could do the same. That told me a lot about his character and his love for family. I was hoping he would feel the same way about me should I ever need a place to live. After my mother passed away, we all knew that my father could no longer live alone since he was diagnosed with dementia. Without hesitation, Frank and Julie stepped up and took him in. They prepared a room, flew up to New Jersey, helped pack his belongings, and Frank jumped into my father's car and drove it down to Florida. A few days later, Julie and my father joined him. Once my father settled in, my wife Helga and I visited. At the time, we lived in the Daytona Beach, Orlando area, so the drive wasn't an issue. Neither one of us were surprised that my father was being well taken care of. Frank and Julie understood that my father left his life behind in Jersey. So to help him get comfortable with his new surroundings, they joined a lodge where he could enjoy happy hour benefits, happy hours of buffets, drinks, and conversations. I have seen Frank put the needs and welfare of others like his family and Synagogue before his own. He never once complained or wanted any recognition for doing something what he thought was right. He made sure his loved ones had everything they needed, plus a little more. This was the type of man Frank was, unselfish and giving. I consider my family lucky that Frank was part of it. This past February, we all met in Houston, Texas, where Helga and I currently live near our children and grandchildren. It had been close to 10 years since we were all in one place at the same time, and I wanted all of us to come together to have a mini reunion, since we have quite a few relatives in the area. Everyone had such a good time reminiscing and catching up. I feel grateful that everyone could spend time together, especially not knowing what the future had in store. I am also grateful you gave Julie so many wonderful years of love and happiness. I am glad we were able to have one more cigar and drink together. Well, Frank, someone was watching you do all these good deeds, and it wasn't just me. I know God was watching you from the very start, and whether you like it or not, you will get your final reward in heaven. You will be missed, and I assure you, you will never be forgotten by the people you impacted during your journey here. And finally, from his nephew Damon from New Jersey. I want to share with you a short story about my Uncle Frankie. In 1985, I was 12 years old, and my grandfather just passed. Pop-Pop, we called him. I remember sitting down at the repast, thinking about my Pop-Pop. I started to cry, and my Uncle Frankie was next to me. He looked at me and said, "It's okay. He's okay." Repeatedly, "It's okay. He's okay." I didn't understand what he was trying to tell me. All I knew is that my grandfather was dead, but it was enough to calm me down. Fast forward 10 years later, and my grandmother Mary passes. I started thinking what a devout Christian she was. Her faith in God was amazing, and so was my Uncle Frankie's. I was still upset that she was gone, but at that moment, I remembered what my Uncle Frankie told me about my Pop-Pop, that she's okay, that they're okay. Her faith and my uncle's faith in God believe that this is not the end. Uncle Frankie, your simple little gesture 35 years ago taught me faith in God will see us through this. I now understand what you meant. This is not the end. You are with God. I will miss you, Uncle Frankie. I know now. It's okay, and you're okay. Love, your nephew, Damon.
Vicky's here.
If Vicky is here, now is your moment.
Right here?
Right here.
Okay. So I have something to read from on his niece, Vicky, and I have something to read from my son, Chase, and from my youngest brother, Vince. Sorry, between hot flashes and being late, I'm sweating to death. So this is from Chase. Who could be cooler than the guy who pulled up on a big Harley Davidson, or the guy that took up 15 spots in the parking lot with his big 18-wheeler? That was my Uncle Frankie. Little did my mom know, Uncle Frankie would often take me for a ride on his bike or the truck just around the parking lot of Wolfie's in Tom's River, and that was about as awesome as it could get for a 4-year-old Chase. I don't recall much time spent in Bamber Lake other than some time we spent there after Aunt Linda's funeral, which is odd to me, because I remember that day so clearly, just as I remember sitting with my grandfather and Uncle Frankie on the day of my great-grandmother's funeral. When my mom asked me if there was anything I would want to write and have it read at today's service, I drew a blank.
You got it.
Just about every memory I have from my childhood is of me on the back of this motorcycle. So I figured I'll keep my memories with me, as I'm sure a lot of people have some funnier or more interesting stories, but here we are. Though my memories of Uncle Frankie are so simple, I decided to share them because what is more beautiful than the simple things in life that we often take for granted? So these are the memories I'll forever cherish, and I hope they put as much a smile on your face now as they did for me then, and continue to do as I type this through the tears in my eyes a couple 100 miles away in New Jersey. Motorcycle rides. Can you tell these were my favorite? Breakfast at Wolfie's with Uncle Frankie and Papa Ted, 50-cent wings at Bert's in Matt-Mache, and dinners at his house in Cape Coral. Waiting for your pepper steak. Thank you. Waiting for your pepper steak to be ready, and I'm so grateful that I got to see you on my last visit down, and that you met the woman who I believe to be the one. and you made sure to remind her to take good care of me. I hope to leave a lasting impression on all I knew, just as you have on me. Until we meet again, love, Chase. I purposely didn't want to read these ahead of time. All right, the next one's from my brother, Vance. And like I said, I wasn't going to do this either. So from Vance. My earliest memories of my childhood involved my Uncle Frankie and Aunt Linda from when they babysat me, and I used to hide in my own little fort in the attic, to when the lake froze over and daring to walk on it, to swimming in the lake. My fondest memories were Christmas time as a kid, going to my Aunt Stella's house and listening to Uncle Frankie and everyone else trying to solve the world's problems, then playing cards all night, and of course arguing, LOL. And now fast forward about 20 years, and I'm now working on my uncle's bike and talking him into buying all the cool parts for his bike, because it's always fun working with somebody else's money. Then watching my uncle and my dad and a few other people sitting at movies again, trying to fix the world's problems. LOL, then arguing, and then playing cards all night. What I really have to say is that in my entire life, I do not have one bad memory of my uncle. I will miss you, and may you rest in peace till we meet again. Love, Vance. As for me, I've always been a big crybaby. I can't remember anything specific, but I was always a screw up in the family, and Uncle Frankie would say, I still love you. My fondest memories are also as a child with all of us at the house in Memory Lake. All the adults downstairs cooking up crabs. We had crabs. They were always cooking on the stove in the big buckets. They were falling on the floor, running around, and the kids would be screaming. And all of us cousins would be upstairs in the attic, smashed into all the beds that were up there, and we used to have so much fun. And how about taking baths in the creek, at Cedar Creek by the waterfall? We used to take baths in there. We'd bring the soap and the shampoo, that was the best. So yeah, a lot of my memories are from being a kid in the summer house in Bear Lake, and I wouldn't give that up for anything. So Uncle Frankie, I hope you're up there riding a nice big Harley or riding the truck of your dreams, and you're looking down on everybody and seeing how much we all love you. I love you and miss you.
Good job.
Frank Bodziak had many roles in his lifetime. He was a son, a husband, a brother, an uncle, father, grandfather, and a fire chief. He drove trucks. He always corrected me about that. He said, I wasn't a truck driver, I was a teamster. Whatever role he played, he did it well. To say that Frank was a formidable man would not be accurate. He was not just a formidable man. He was larger than life. There isn't a person he met whose life wasn't impacted by him. Everybody always remembered Frank. Julie and Frank went on an Israel tour with us a number of years ago. I won't go into all the details of the tour, but I will say that the tour guide, at the end of a week, said something I've never heard him say before to anybody, any group. He said, Frank, I'll never forget you. Frank was a strong person and a role model and a hard worker. What kind of role model was he? He was a role model on how to live life. He adapted to whatever came his way in good times and in hard times. He was the teamster whose life was transformed by the reality of Yeshua in his life, Jesus in him. He was the strength of his family and his friends. He raised his daughter, Alicia. He took pride in her and raised her so she'd have a sense of her own potential. And he had high expectations of her. And he loved his grandchildren. He was one of those people that when you met him, you were better off for it. As a husband, he was a helpmate and a partner. He was someone who didn't look to grab the spotlight. And he preferred that people didn't know when he helped them. I used to enjoy, I traveled for my work to Eastern Europe quite frequently. One day I got back from Poland, which is part of Frank's, heritage and background. I said, hey, in Poland, your name isn't Frank. He goes, what do you mean? I said, in Poland, your name is Franusz. He goes, that's what my grandmother called me. I go, right. So after that, anytime we talk on the phone, he'd go, yes, my rabbi. And I would go, Franusz. It was like a ritual. But to me, he was my Franusz. He didn't seek the spotlight, as I said. He didn't want people knowing when he did something for them. He felt he'd lose his reward with God, and he valued that more than you knowing about it. It made him very generous towards others. In fact, that's why I chose to have Frank as my friend. I met Frank in this room about 13 years ago. I was dating my wife. This is where I took her for a date. But I was dating my wife, and Frank was the greeter. And you know what hit me first about him? The East Coast accent. That was my native language. And I liked that. And he was wearing, the thing with the truck on it. My father drove a truck. So I felt an instant connection with him. And then, as I got to know him over several weeks, I watch people and I don't say anything, but I draw my own conclusions. I saw him helping people out, on the side. He didn't want them to know about it. Somebody needed money, he'd roll up some money and, shake the hand and pass off a few bucks. If somebody needed a hand, he'd be the first one who was there. But this is a quality person. This is a person I would want to have for a friend. And by the grace of God, we were friends. He did it because it was the outworking of his faith. Because he believed in Yeshua. And that faith increased his decency as a human being. We are all enriched by knowing him. It kind of reminded me of my grandfather. He was real, and his faith was real. He took God seriously, but he didn't always take people seriously. People play games, you may have noticed. Not you, of course, but people do. He didn't take people's games seriously. But he had a sixth sense about people. If he liked you, he trusted you and would do anything to help you. If he had a bad feeling about someone, he just didn't associate with them. It was their loss because Frank was the real deal. There was no guile in him. He always wanted people to be real with him, but more so real with God. Frank liked to help people as long as people didn't know about it. You know who Frank was to me? He was the guy who always took me to and picked me up from the airport on the many trips that I make. I mean, I've flown over 1 million miles. Frank's the guy who picks me up, or took me to the airport, and took me home. No matter how late my plane got in, Sometimes he'd be there at 2 in the morning waiting. And he always complained about it. But he was always there. And he knew, you know why he was there? Because he knew it meant a lot to me that he was there waiting. Frank was the guy who, along with Julie, hosted weekly Friday night dinners, Shabbat dinners, at their house, at his own expense. He never asked anybody to chip in. I say, Frank, can I bring something? He said, bring a smile. You know, he didn't let you bring anything. Maybe he just didn't like what I bring. But he did all the cooking himself. And he made sure that there was something for everybody to eat. If you had special dietary requirements, he went the extra mile for that. Frank was the guy who quietly gave people money when they had a need. Frank was the guy who lifted people's spirits when they were hurting. Put his arm around you, tell you it'll be okay. Frank was the guy who cared. I loved sitting on the lanai with Frank, smoking cigars. I don't know what they were drinking. I was having Diet Snapple. But it was our special time. If other people came over to join us, we kind of smiled at them and waited for them to leave. He was outspoken, and sometimes he could be embarrassing, but we had a blast. We were in Israel, and we were smoking Cuban cigars on Ben Yehuda Street, which you're not supposed to do. I often felt this guy was going to get me in trouble, but we always got away with it. Frank always got away with it. In fact, I have to tell you, when we were planning this service, I had to call Lee County Sheriff's Office to make sure we were allowed to have this many people at the funeral. Yeah, they said yes. But then I was thinking, nothing would have pleased Frank more than knowing that his funeral was raided by the cops. How do you measure a person's life? Some people measure a life by their accomplishments, or by the children they have, or by the amount of money they accumulate, or how long they lived. All those things are false measures because they tell us little or nothing about the person. A life is best measured by the effect we have on others. The person whose life touched and enriched others is a valuable life. The scriptures teach us that we are to love our neighbor as we would love ourselves. The great sage Hillel said, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, then what am I? And if not now, then when? Frank was a deeply religious man, and his life reflected these spiritual principles. He didn't care for pious words, but he was a good man, and he always took care of his responsibilities. He reached out to others, and he did what he had to, and he did what was needed. King Solomon wrote, "Then I realized that it is good and proper for a man to eat and drink and find satisfaction in his toilsome labor under the sun during the few days of life that God has given him, for this is his lot." And this characterized Frank. He lived his life, and he loved his life, and he enjoyed his life. And even though he could drive her crazy, he loved and valued and appreciated Julie. Sometimes when we were sitting on the lanai and he got Julie to go away, he told me how blessed he was. He said, "Don't tell her." Death is a hard thing for us. We mourn because we lose someone who is precious to us. We pause to remember the life of someone we loved and what they meant to us. And we're thankful for having had a part in that person's life. But dealing with death is really difficult because it means separation. It means going into the unknown. And when you think about it, death seems unnatural, almost an intrusion into our existence, as if it were never intended by our Creator. And it leaves you with the question of why. Why do we lose the people we love? Why do people die? And why do we have to grieve that? In other words, why did God let this happen? It says in Scripture, "For I take no pleasure in the death of anyone, declares the Lord. Return to me and live." King David said, "Precious in the sight of the Lord are the death of his people." When we grieve, God grieves too. He's not happy when our lives have pain and suffering. He's not happy when we die, because that's not how he intended life to be. He created us to live and have lives that would find contentment in him. Much human misery is a result of us not finding our strength in him, but in going our own way. Even then, he doesn't stop loving us, and his only desire is that we return to him. And it's in that turning to him that we find peace. Solomon said it's better to go to the house of mourning than to a house of feasting, for death is the destiny of every man. The living should take this to heart. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of pleasure. His point is that it is the death of those closest to us in that we're reminded of the common destiny of us all. It's a reminder that we need to consider how we live our lives and to find peace with God. God is just, and we can trust him to do the right thing. Our faith has the belief that this world is not all there is. We believe in the resurrection of the dead. It has always held the idea that this life is a period, and beyond that, we will see our loved ones. It means life is a continuum. We've lost Frank's body, but his soul and his spirit are indeed alive. I'm reminded of the words of a worship song. You have not come to a desert mount, but you have come to the living God. You have come to the heavenly city, the New Jerusalem. And there are thousands and thousands of mighty angels before the throne. This is the kingdom that cannot be shaken. Worship God alone. Frank is standing before the throne of the living God. And there are thousands and thousands of angels surrounding him, worshiping God in a kingdom that cannot be shaken. And he is happy. There's a prayer called El Mole Rachami. God full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant proper rest on the sheltering wings of your presence, in the lofty levels of the holy and pure, who shine as the brightness of the firmament unto the soul of Frank Bodziak, who has gone to his place and for whose memory we pray. May his rest be in paradise. May the God of compassion bring him under the cover of God's wings and bind his soul in the bond of life. May the Lord be his heritage, and may he repose in his resting place in peace. And let us say, Amen. May the Lord console you among the other mourners of Zion. The Lord gives, and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Psalm 91 says, he who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. For he will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his wings, and under his wings you shall find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and a buckler. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in darkness, nor the destruction that wastes at noonday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only look with your eyes and see the recompense of the wicked. Because you have made the Lord your dwelling place, the Most High, who is my refuge, no evil shall be allowed to befall you. No plague will come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. On their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. Because he holds fast to me in love, I will deliver him. I will protect him, because he knows my name. When he calls to me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and honor him. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. At this point, there's a traditional prayer we do called Mourner's Kaddish. It's a prayer of praise to God, thanking God for Frank's life. And to recite it is to do something for someone they can't. Frank is in God's presence, but he can't recite this. But we recite it on his behalf. So I'll ask us all to rise. I'll recite it in Hebrew for us. Yiskadal v'yiskadash shamei rabbah. V'almad yivrach yirsei v'yamlech malchusei. V'chayechon v'yumechon v'chay dekal beis Yisrael. V'agola u'vizman kariv v'yimru Amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mavorach v'olam v'yomei amayim. Yisbarach v'yishtabach v'yispa'ar v'yisraman v'yisnaseh. V'yisadar v'yisalev v'yisalel shemei v'kudishah v'reku. Leila min chol b'rukasa v'shirasa. Tush b'chasa v'ne'amasa. Dami ram v'yoma v'yimru Amen. Yehei shlam araba min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'yimru Amen. Osei shalom b'namav. Uyasei shalom aleinu, Ya'akol Yisrael, v'yimru Amen. Do we have it in English? Magnified and sanctified be his great name in the world which he has created according to his will. May he establish his kingdom during your life and during your days, and during the life of all the house of Israel, even speedily and at a near time. And let us say, Amen.
Let his great name,
His great name be blessed forever and ever. Blessed, praised, and glorified Exalted, extolled, and honored, magnified and lauded be the name of the Holy One. Blessed be he. Though he be high above all the blessings and hymns, praises, and consolations which are uttered in the world, and say ye, Amen. May there be abundant peace from heaven and life for us and for all Israel, and say ye, Amen. May he who makes peace in his high places, may he make peace for us and for all Israel, and say, Amen. You may be seated, and I believe there is some instruction. Oh, you want to do the slideshow? Could we do the slideshow now? Please be seated. Julie, do you want to say something about this?
Thank you, everyone.
I just wanted to invite everybody to stay for some food. I know in these times it's everybody's concerned about eating food together, but we're taking some precautions to make sure you are healthy and safe. I'm just going to give you